All right, welcome to the Party Pals, GRC Mafia. Right out of the gate, we're here to break down barriers, foster collaboration, and community working towards a more secure future for everybody. Definitely a learning and growing environment. So this is one of the first 2 weeks of the month, so we have a presentation for this session. That's going to be followed by Q&A and then also the open stage and open discussions as usual. During that open stage, you guys are more than welcome to come up on the stage and encouraged to do so. You do not have to turn on your video if you guys do not want to. You could join with just the mic to join the conversation directly, or you can stick around and chat, which is fine as well. We'll be watching that closely. Definitely ask questions, share resources throughout. Even if it doesn't pertain to exactly what we're talking about at the time, worst case scenario, we could circle back around to it. One of the best places to share like your social media, whether that's LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever, is to join our Discord server and go over to the live chat channel. You could post your resources and your social media there. So that way that relays everywhere and people can connect with you that way. We also have a socials and intro channel that you can also introduce yourself as well if you haven't joined the server prior. Like I said, definitely ask questions and share resources throughout if you guys would like to. And just don't share anything that you guys don't want to be public. If you happen to do so, reach out to me on Discord, LinkedIn, or there's also contact@studygrc.org. Now, you guys may be familiar or not, but B-Dubs, I'm going to go ahead and drop this in chat. B-Dubs publishes a cybersecurity GRC related video or article and video actually for the walk. Oh my gosh, I almost had that. B-Dubs publishes an article every single Monday about cybersecurity GRC and also has a read-along video attached to those. You guys can check that out. And then also that CISSP study group is coming to an end. I believe Saturday is the last session, but that's going to be freely available on YouTube forever. Now, of course, we have our website as well, and then our resources page is the highlight of that. Now, there's a couple things before we transition over here. We do have our giveaway that we just published in the Discord server. You join our Discord, you go over to the giveaways channel, and anybody can participate. There's no strings attached. The only thing you have to do is click the button to participate, and then you do have to be in the server for the bot to be able to draw you at the end of the month. That is always drawn on the last Thursday of every month at the start of our meeting. This month, we've decided to just go through and do a merch pack for 2 people. So there'll be 2 winners, and you guys will get a mystery pack of merch. And then also the badge. So I see some of you guys trying to grab that GRC badge. I just posted the instructions here. We did change things around a little bit. So to get your guys' weekly badge, all you guys have to do is head on over to the live chat channel and just mention Brexy. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with Brexy. Just go to the live chat channel and do @Brexy and mention him. And that will give you guys that check mark that you guys are used to, verifying that the bot has applied the GRC Mafia badge for you for the next week. And then without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and transition over here. And let's see. Welcome to the party, pal, Kelly.
Well, hi, Chris, B-Dubs. I am super glad to be here. How are you guys doing?
Awesome. Yeah, and welcome to the party, pal, everybody. I see Brenda, B-Dubs. We got PBO.
Space Tacos.
Oh, yeah, Space Tacos. Yeah, and also, everybody, Space Tacos has the GRC Audit Treasure Trove. That's going in chat, too. Yeah, thank you so much for presenting for us, and I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Well, hey, everybody. I wish I could see your faces and say hi to you, but I'm super glad you're here. I know it's Thursday, and maybe you're missing something fun in your neighborhood. Maybe you're giving up time with your family. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I have some insights I want to share with you, and I also want to stand in solidarity with you tonight and say, hey, I know GRC can be less than fun sometimes. Other times it can be rewarding. Sometimes it can be a bit lonely. So today, what I want to share with you is how to increase our standing a little bit with our colleagues, our organizations. And I also want to put to rest that nasty rumor going around that AI is going to take all of our jobs. Trust me, the skills needed to be a good GRC professional, there's no way in the world AI is going to take that over. So what we're going to talk about today is how can GRC be in our RGF? And yes, I brought the acronyms for each and every one of you today. I brought the acronyms. I brought brought some juicy stories, some spicy stories, and hopefully some things you can take home with you and practice tomorrow and subsequent days at work. Okay, well, let's get going here. Our agenda for this evening, we're going to first talk a little bit about truths and misconceptions around GRC. And I'm not completely sure who's joining us and what your knowledge of GRC is. We'll just touch on that real carefully. And this will be something of a therapy session for you as well, because you're going to hear some misconceptions. Maybe you've heard from your coworkers, maybe you've read online, and we're going to address some of those misconceptions. I'm going to share a couple true tales of absent GRC. Hopefully these are familiar tales, or maybe you don't know all the stories, but bad things happen when organizations don't have GRC. And then we're going to answer the question, is GRC a cost center? Yes, no, maybe. But how do we know that? We're going to talk a little bit about measures and metrics. These are terms that frequently get mixed up, misunderstood, misused, misrepresented, mistaken. I think those are all my miss words. And then, so let's talk a little bit about the tools that we're going to put in your tool chest today. We're going to talk a little bit about those measures and metrics. We're also going to talk about narratives and credible challenges. This is the people side of GRC, how to convince stakeholders and boards of directors, how to fund those things that you want funded, how to continue to get resources for those projects you're working on. And we're going to lastly talk a little bit about revenue generating functions. B-Dubs and Chris are nice enough to keep an eye on the Discord, the messages going back and forth. So please, if you've got any questions, I'll keep an eye on it. They'll keep an eye on it, and feel free to interrupt me today. Okay, so if you don't know who I am, I'm Callie Taralla. You may have seen me on some of the webinars over at Black Hills. You may have seen me at different B-Sides presentations. I've been doing GRC for a long time because actually I like it. I like it a lot. I like small GRC. I love big GRC. I can't lie. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to know more about my background. I really hate putting up all those background slides. People just get lost in all the letters. But I want to talk about good governance. Good governance is less about structures and rules, and it's really more about being effective, being focused, and accountable. And one of those things I want to blow out of the water this evening is GRC is nothing but a checklist, or it's nothing but an audit, and it's nothing but a paper trail. Good governance and good programs allow the organization to meet its business goals, to meet its revenue goals, its objectives. If you're not familiar with Pearl's website, I put the link down in the bottom there. Perhaps the folks can put it in the chat for us. But Pearl is an innovator when it comes to thinking about information technology, artificial intelligence, but she's got a real knack for looking at how to combine the technology piece and the leadership piece. So I find her pearls of wisdom to be very helpful. Okay, so let's get into some of the ugliness of GRC. Okay, first of all, we've spent a lot of time looking at governance, risk, and compliance. Probably I have mostly cybersecurity people. Maybe there's some privacy people here. Maybe there's some new AI governance people in our group tonight. But I kind of want to broaden our horizons and look at governance, risk, and compliance from an organizational or enterprise level. Sometimes we get kind of caught in the weeds a little bit when it comes to the cybers or the technology. But remember, governance, risk, and compliance is meant to be a unified framework. And what do we mean by that? Well, some of you may know I took a Route 66 trip in May, and I started in Chicago, and I went all the way to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then back to Chicago. And one of the ways I was able to do that was we've got an interstate system. We kind of take it for granted, but we know all of the signs are going to be big and green with white lettering, and they're going to be reflective. And that is an example of a unified framework. no matter if I'm in Illinois, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, I know that the signs are going to look the same. The other thing we forget about governance, risk, and compliance is it's a coordinated approach. And I'm going to have to pick on some of us here in the group this evening and say, listen, if you're doing governance, risk, and compliance only within cybersecurity, and you're not talking to perhaps the other risk folks at your organization, or you're not talking to your legal department or your HR people, governance, risk, and compliance is meant to be an enterprise effort. It's supposed to be a coordinated approach. And honestly, you can make some new friends and learn some new things as well when you work with other business units. GRC is also meant to guide business decisions. Can we grow? Can we build that new plant or that new factory? Can we hire 100 more GRC people? What does our next quarter look like? What are our 5-year plans? Well, those are hard to answer if we don't exactly know how we're moving the business objectives forward together. And lastly, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Governance, risk, and compliance helps ensure that all of the organization's goals and values are aligned. Okay, so let's get in the weeds a little bit here. Truth and misconceptions about GRC. Well, I think most of us in this study group tonight, we've got some strong feelings about governance, risk, and compliance. We understand it streamlines processes. Remember, when we're building laptops, or we're building desktop machines for a number of our coworkers, we want to streamline that process. We want to make sure we've got a golden image. We want to make sure we're following a benchmark or a configuration baseline. We want to reduce operational disruptions, because I'm guessing a lot of you came from IT, and perhaps you were on call, you were getting paged, your weekends weren't your own. You understand operational disruptions aren't just things that are upsetting the business, but they also upset our work-life balance. And that's really important to all of us. Governance, risk, and compliance efforts protect against lawsuits, help decrease insurance costs. If you've ever been involved in the process of renewing your cyber insurance policy, maybe you've had to answer a questionnaire, or at your organization, you're part of the vendor risk management program, and you're looking at having vendors fill out questionnaires. GRC can also reduce redundancies. And I think more importantly, we can help guide our senior leadership and our boards of directors on the maturity of the organization, and that allows them to make better business decisions. Okay, now let's pull up a chair together. Let's open up a soda, can of beer, and let's talk about the misconceptions that you and I and our friends deal with every day when it comes to GRC. How many of you have heard, oh, that's not real work. You're not configuring a server. You're not updating the firewall. You're just walking around with a proverbial checklist and clipboard and harassing me or making my life difficult. Or you get the eye roll. It's just another regulatory requirement. It's just another thing I got to do. And trust me, I've seen the eye roll. I may have even given the eye roll a few times. Another misconception, GRC is just about cybersecurity. Well, if you're not talking about cybersecurity, I don't need to talk about GRC. That's a horrible misconception. How many of us have heard, oh, I don't need to talk to you for another year. The audit's done. I've done my bit. I don't need to participate in the assessment. I'm working on a really big project right now. Or maybe you've heard this as well. Well, it's artificial intelligence. I'm just fooling around with a ChatGPT prompt. Oh, we don't have to worry about that. Actually, yeah, we do. GRC is not just a spreadsheet. It's not just a one-time project. Are there other misconceptions that you've heard that perhaps that didn't make it to the list here? Well, I'll tell you one that I encounter fairly frequently, and that has to do with pay ranges and pay scales. People say, well, you're just a writer, you're just a spreadsheet person. You don't, I don't see your earning potential the same as perhaps an architect or an engineer. And I want to tell you that isn't true. Not only do GRC people have to have strong communication, writing skills, conflict management skills, project management skills, but they also need the technical skills too, because how can you audit something if you don't understand it? Do you hear me, friends? I think we do. Hey, can I get an amen? Okay, so I think we've dealt with some of these misconceptions around GRC. Well, let's stop looking backwards and let's look at some true tales of absent GRC. I'm hoping some of you are familiar with these tales I'm going to tell you. Perhaps you are, perhaps you aren't, but let's get into it. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about Enron. Are you familiar with the Enron scandal back in the early 2000s? So Enron was an energy company in Texas, and Enron did some, let's just say, creative accounting. And you can read about it. I put an image of Kurt Eichenwald's book up here, Conspiracy of Fools. If you haven't read it, it is an absolutely fabulous book. It was a good movie, but the movie just didn't have the same depth that the book does. But basically, Enron failed, and it failed miserably because there was active deception by senior leadership on the debts that they were accruing. They were using creative accounting to hide those debts. Arthur Andersen was the auditing and consulting firm that was looking at their financial statements. They also were somewhat complicit in it, and it's a fascinating story, and I can't get into all of it right now. But those of you who are good at playing along with pub trivia or GRC trivia, can you tell me what federal act came out of the Enron scandal? Oh, there we go. SOX, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. Thank you very much. Flakinator comes in. How many of you are familiar with FTC consent decrees? A consent decree, if you haven't been at an organization that's been issued one, it basically means the FTC has found something really bad going on at your organization, and they've investigated and they found reason that you weren't following best practices, you weren't following data privacy practices. And remember, the FTC has jurisdiction under Section 5, unfair trade and deceptive practices. Facebook and Snapchat both had consent decrees issued from the FTC against them for deceptive data practices. And you're like, okay, whatever. It's a piece of paper that said, naughty, naughty, don't do that again. It's actually much more intrusive and difficult when you're when your organization receives a consent decree from the FTC. It's a 20-year it's a 20-year relationship. Can I say it's something like a bad marriage? In that the FTC says you're going to be responding to all of our requests. You're going to have regular audits. And I actually have a colleague of mine whose entire job is he's a consultant, and he goes into different organizations and he works with them as their internal liaison with the FTC to respond to the consent decrees. And so why do I bring this up? These are organizations that willingly set aside good governance, risk, and compliance practices to cut corners, save money, get a product out the door, hide things from the board of directors. And not only did it cost them fines, in the case of Enron, does Enron still exist anymore? Certainly does not. Both Facebook and Snapchat, and I have the old icons up there, are under I keep saying that, consent decrees for 20 years. So if you're worried about job security, trust me, we'll always need good GRC people because those of us who are in this space, we're really good at figuring out puzzles. We're really good at helping other people. And honestly, I believe we want to help organizations stay out of the doghouse. Boy, there's an old cliche right there, isn't there? Okay, so let me highlight what happened at Enron. Where were the failures? Well, we had a governance failure because the board of directors had no idea exactly what senior management was doing. And because they weren't actively reviewing financial statements, they weren't asking hard questions, they weren't involved to the level that they should have been, it enabled fraud. It enabled Enron to hide billions of dollars of debt, and it also enabled conflicts of interest between Enron and Arthur Andersen, their auditing firm at the time. Another thing that Enron did is they used special purpose entities, or SPEs, to hide the risk of all of this debt. And while they were using these SPEs, the board that was in place didn't have the expertise to understand the pros and the cons, or the legal ramifications or the financial ramifications of using SPEs. So as I mentioned, Enron had these huge debts, and their ability to pay their creditors back, to invest. Remember, energy companies are building new pipelines, they're building new infrastructure. They need money to be able to do that. So what else went wrong with Enron? They had weak or non-existent controls. And I have a feeling most of the people on our call tonight knows what a control is, but let me just remind you, a control is a safeguard we put in place. They also didn't have a mechanism in place to allow whistleblowers to allow the board of directors or other leaders to know what was going on. And as Flakinator mentioned a little earlier, it did lead to the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, and the demise of both Enron and Arthur Andersen. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Facebook. What happened that it led to Facebook getting a consent decree from the FTC? We had failure of the board for oversight and challenging management. Their privacy practices were not documented. If they were, they weren't exactly following them. And if you remember, we had the Cambridge Analytica scandal. There's been all sorts of challenges over there. Another situation that arose at Facebook is they didn't vet or monitor third-party apps, Cambridge Analytica. They also were knowingly ignoring misuse of their platform and knowing that their third parties were misusing their users or customers' data. Facebook also violated existing FTC orders, didn't allow users to really know what was going on with their data. They had ineffective audits. It led to legal penalties, led to the consent decree, loss of public trust. I put that on there maybe for a couple days. There was loss of public trust. I think Facebook, though, is one of those generational uses. My mother would be on Facebook. Maybe I used to be on Facebook, but I think younger people aren't on Facebook as much as some of the older people are. And I'm not going to say who a younger person is or an older person. That's going to get me into trouble here. Okay, so these are a couple examples of what happens when we don't have good governance, risk, and compliance. Okay, is governance, risk, and compliance a cost center? Yeah, so I've got a hair right on the edge of my nose and it's driving me nuts. So I'm not a cocaine user. I just have a long hair that's itching my nose here, if you're wondering. Sorry about that. Okay, so perhaps you've heard GRC is a cost center. Well, what is a cost center? A cost center is something that costs resources, people resources, money, budget, and it doesn't seem to produce any revenue, or it doesn't seem to make anything for the company. And there's an assumption going around that GRC is a cost center. And I'm going to challenge us and say, no, I don't think GRC is a cost center. the existing narrative has it sound like it is, but I don't believe that's the case. Let's dig into this a little bit more. Well, what are the costs of a GRC program? How many of you are involved in implementing configuration baselines or implementing a control framework? You're implementing a vulnerability management program. So we've got implementation costs that uh, uh, involve people, human resources, licenses, time. Perhaps we have to take systems down temporarily to update them or to assess them, or at least pause a job or a particular process that's going on. We've got the cost of operational resources. I've mentioned already people. Perhaps we need a place for folks to work. We've got to set aside a conference room for the assessment or the audits to happen in. Oh my goodness, we got to make pots and pots of black coffee or have Mountain Dew available when we're going through an assessment or an audit. Maybe some of you are in organizations where part of your job is if there is an on-site auditor, you have to pretty much be with them as much as possible. I have a sister who's involved in the pharmaceutical industry, and when the FDA comes in, it's her job to be with the assessor or the auditor at all times, pretty much to guide them, answer any questions, provide any sort of documentation. Costs of a GRC program, talent. Hey, babies, you don't come cheap, and neither do I. We've put a lot of time and effort into understanding frameworks, understanding risk. I bet we've got curious, smart, intellectual people here tonight, and we don't come cheap. And if somebody wants to get a GRC person cheap, you better tell them, hey, we are continuous learners. We have curiosity, we have drive, we have motivation. It takes the right person to do GRC work. And also organizational friction. Now, does that mean like when you rub your two socks together and they stick and they sparkle? I kind of miss that in Florida. There's so much humidity there. I don't get any sort of static electricity, but I'm not talking about static electricity. I'm talking about the technology team or your IT group who says, oh my goodness, insert eye roll here. Here's the assessor, here's the GRC people. I can't implement something because I have to do this audit. And yet, exactly. Coffee's the cost of a GRC program. I hear you on that one. And a business enabler. Amen. So there are costs of a GRC program, but what we're going to talk about in a few minutes on the next slides is reframing the narrative to talk about the benefits and the efficiencies of a GRC program, not the costs of a GRC program. Okay, drum roll, measures and metrics. So I see the question, how did I get into GRC? Well, that's a big, long conversation there. I actually started, how did I start in GRC? Because nobody else wanted to do it. I like writing policies. So people would say, hey, would you help write our InfoSec policies? Hey, would you update that? That's actually how I got into it. I used to be a system administrator, used to be a network administrator, but that's how it happened. So if you find something in GRC that nobody else wants to do, you've got job security, people. Okay, so measures and metrics. These two terms get confused quite often, and I want to pause on this slide and talk about what the difference is between measures and metrics. And in the upcoming days, you will hear people using these terms incorrectly, and you can just smile to yourself and say, I know better. So a measure is a smaller unit. It's the raw data points. It's a very specific thing. Measures will represent a single value. It's usually the first step. And when we put together a pattern of measures or a pattern of data points, then we have metrics. And why am I bringing this up? Well, we talked about GRC potentially being a cost center, but now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of flip the dialogue a little bit, and we're going to talk about how we can show the business that GRC does provide value. When we talk about metrics, metrics track performance. How many of you are wearing a smartwatch? There's measures and metrics right there. It measures how many steps you take during the day, and then you get the little, if it's an Apple Watch, you get the bullseye. Hey, Kelly, you've walked so many steps today. That's the metric, but the measure is each and every step. We're surrounded by measures and metrics every day. But the thing sometimes people miss is metrics involve relationships between measures. Metrics are the story. They're the insights. They help us understand all of those raw data points that we were gathering. There are whole books on measures, metrics, how to build metrics into your GRC program. I'm not even going to touch on that today. That's a whole nother presentation. But what I do want to work through with you guys tonight is just talking about the foundation and maybe plant a seed of how you can measure GRC. So when people come back and say, oh, it's just a cost center, it's just a checklist, it's just a pain in the butt, you can say, look at this is what GRC has done to help build and support our organization. I've got 3 examples here on the slide. So a measure of incident response. Maybe incident response doesn't fall under governance, risk, and compliance in your organization, but it's an easy to talk about topic that most of us understand. So we want to see how good or poorly we're doing at incident response. Well, a metric would be, I'm going to ask my help desk to track how long it takes to close a help desk ticket. Well, remember, metrics give us insight on multiple data points or measures. So the metric would be speeds of addressing and resolving incidents. Did you know that you can apply measures and metrics to policies as well? I know a lot of organizations will ask end users or team members to read the policy and then sign or acknowledge that they've read it. But how do we really know or measure if our team member understands what the policy actually says? Well, one of the measures we could do with policies is during our security awareness training, ask a very specific question regarding a policy statement. Do you know what to do if you left your phone at home and it's your MFA device, or it's the tool you use in the MFA process? Do you understand that? Yes or no? Oh, look at that. Under metric, see, I missed something under my metric slide there. So the metric would be, do our team members understand our policy statements, and are we tracking that? If we find out that our team members don't understand a particular policy statement, well, that gives us information to update it, clarify it. Maybe we've got to go back to the committee that wrote the policy and say, listen, we thought it said green bananas, but it actually says red apples, or whatever it is. I've been in situations where we thought we wrote the policy as carefully as we possibly could, and it didn't read the way to other people as it read to us. Sometimes we have blinders on. Also, another measure and metric we can look at in our GRC programs is the audit function. A measure, what type of audits are we doing? Are we doing an internal audit? Are we doing a network audit? Are we doing a benchmark audit? What's the metric we're gathering from those data points? Is our audit program comprehensive? Do we need to be doing more preparation for a PCI audit? Should we be doing a generative AI audit? Okay, metrics and measures, they're data points, they're numbers, they're statistics. they provide the details for how we communicate with other business units and with stakeholders. And we're going to pivot a little bit now and talk about narratives and credible challenges. This is the people side of governance, risk, and compliance. But before we begin to tell a narrative or explain the good things that GRC is doing, we kind of need to understand measures and metrics to be able to provide color or details to our stories. I'm emphasizing narratives here because I feel like our narratives in governance, risk, and compliance were taken hostage by other departments, especially the IT department. And I kind of want you guys to stand up and say, no, it's our narrative, it's our story, and this is what we're going to tell you. If you're involved in different community groups, perhaps your church, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, or even if you're playing trivia at the local bar and pub, our lives are built on stories and narratives. They're good. Sometimes they're feel good. Sometimes it's a way for us to bond with other people. It's a way to show empathy. It's a way to show solidarity. And I want to kind of spark a fire in you all and say, listen, let's work on our governance, risk, and compliance narratives and tell the story the way we want to tell the story. Okay, so why are GRC narratives so important? Well, we talked about measures and metrics, but if we don't tell them why they're important or why we're measuring them or why it helps the business, they're just numbers. They're just facts on the page. They're just a bullet in a PowerPoint deck. Can I say that to be fair? Okay. I don't know about you, but I've sat through quite a number of PowerPoint decks that had measures and metrics on them that didn't make any sense to me. They weren't explained well. There wasn't a narrative to help support those metrics. Remember, narratives also explain what the full story is. Why are we doing risk assessments? Well, we're doing risk assessments because we don't want bad actors on our network. We don't want sanctions or fines from regulatory agencies. We want an assessment so we can prepare for the team of external auditors before they show up. This is why narratives are important. A narrative also helps our senior leadership and our board understand the decisions we made, or it also can serve as an opportunity to help them make those big decisions and see the big picture. Remember, I mentioned earlier in our presentation, you are bright, curious, driven folks, and you know details and minutia about frameworks and cybersecurity and privacy that nobody else does. And they don't understand why we made the decisions we do because they don't need to. They don't need to know all the details. But when you take it up to the 30,000 foot view and tell a story, they can understand a little bit better. I also want to highlight the importance of ethical conduct. We saw a couple stories earlier of companies that didn't exercise good ethical conduct and they paid for it. A couple of them don't even exist anymore. When you have an expectation of trustworthiness, integrity, and ethical conduct, that just makes it a better place to work. And when there's that expectation of that expectation of behavior, then that kind of puts a framework or a flavor around policies. Have you been in organizations where you pick up their policy and you're like, oh, this is dry, this is boring, I don't get it, why do I have to do this? But if you explain to people why you're asking them to not install games on their work laptop or their work phone, or you explain to them that, hey, if you say in a Zoom meeting, let me share my screen, you're actually doing more than sharing your screen. You're actually allowing remote access to your computer. That helps them understand why we have policy statements. And the last one I have on here, when we help folks understand that we're trying to save jobs, build the business, increase revenue, and make it just a more pleasant place to work, people can embrace that culture and they become part of the solution, and we don't see them as the problem anymore. Okay, I put this in the presentation, uh, well, because I really like Edward R. Murrow. If you don't know who he was a journalist back in, I want to say World War One. But what he did is he, he was a modern storyteller during his time. He would have this radio show and he would ask people, "What do you believe?" And people would come on the show and they'd say, "Listen, I'm a lunch lady at my local school because I really believe kids need nutrition. They need a good meal so they can focus and they can grow their bodies, grow their minds, grow their souls." And so what he did is he built this amazing radio show called This I Believe. And he talked a lot in there about credibility, but credibility, a big part of it is being truthful. And you may have sensed a theme here. I've got a duplicate slide there. Well, you know what? It was such a good slide, I put it in twice. Sorry about that. I lost my mojo on my slide deck there. So I talked about ethics, integrity, being credible, and sometimes this is where things get a bit, can I say, ugly? Sometimes we get, what's the word I'm trying to say? We get challenged. We bring up, this is what we need to be doing. We need to do this risk assessment, or we've got this audit coming up, and people roll their eyes at us. So they say, why do we need to do that? And I've been in situations, especially when I was younger, when I would get irritated. I would roll my eyes, and honestly, I wasn't acting very much like an adult. I misunderstood people's questions, or they're pushing back on some of the GRC initiatives I was doing. And I want to say, listen, when organizations positively challenge you, that's a good thing. And that's what we're calling a credible challenge. And and we want to open up conversations, and we want to open up probing questions. And we want our boards of directors, we want our senior leadership to ask us good questions and to understand what it is we're trying to say. Let them question our narrative and not the story as a whole. But if they don't understand what we mean by MFA, then what's the point in talking about it if they don't understand the acronym? And I did it myself on this presentation, but sometimes we just got to step away from the acronyms and actually tell people what the word is. When we engage boards of directors, senior leadership, even our peers and other business units, it allows us to assess our decisions, assess the assumptions we've been working under, and it allows us to perhaps broaden our horizons, rethink a problem. And honestly, sometimes by having those challenges from other business units, they allow us to tweak our program a little bit and make it better. I'm also bringing this up because if your organization does get in a situation where they're involved in litigation, when you have committee meetings or you have agendas and you can say, listen, we did have an active discussion about implementing MFA over 4th of July weekend, and we decided it was too risky, so we postponed the deployment by 2 weeks, or whatever the decision was. When you have those questions and those pushbacks documented, if you're in a situation where you have to produce it for discovery, it makes your organization look a little bit better, saying, listen, we did talk about it, we documented it. So I guess what I'm saying to you folks is sometimes it's okay to put the ego aside and let people challenge us if we've come from a technology background, things can be pretty black and white, on or off, zeros or ones. But when we allow other people to question our assumptions and our decisions, it really makes it a better decision. It allows us to tweak it a little bit. Okay, see what I said about acronyms? I just did it. Governance, risk, and compliance as a revenue generating function. Okay, so if we walk away with nothing else from this presentation, GRC is a revenue generating function. We get to change the narrative on that. Well, what does that mean? We talked earlier in the presentation, GRC is perceived as a cost center. It's perceived as checklists. It's perceived as something that just gets in the way. It's not viewed as something that grows the business, but I'm going to challenge you on that perception and say it actually does grow the business. GRC is an enabler. Through GRC, with consistent policies and procedures, we can find cost savings, we can find efficiency. A lot of times GRC automation reduces manual labor, reduces, can I say spreadsheet hell? We've all been in spreadsheet hell. Streamlines our compliance and risk management. And perhaps you're in an organization that doesn't want to spend a lot of money on a GRC platform. If you find yourself in that situation, perhaps you can work on the narrative and say, listen, if we have some sort of GRC automation, our server admins aren't producing evidence or screen captures for the 5th time on the exact same control this year. It's kind of a waste of time to have them do it over and over and over again. When we have effective GRC, remember GRC, they're guardrails and guide rails. It allows us to make our products faster. It allows us to bring new products to the market faster. It supports better sales meeting customer and regulatory requirements, and sort of the big ones. Helps us protect our organization's reputation and trust. We saw a couple stories of organizations that completely blew trust out of the water. And also, when we've got measures and metrics and narratives, it improves the organization's decision making. They know exactly what sort of risks they're dealing with or not dealing with. For example, you'll have an executive who reads the headlines on his web browser, and we've got nation state actors, but it's a tiny little organization that really isn't impacted by nation state actors. And the CEO calls you and says, oh my goodness, we've got to deal with this. We're under attack from the North Koreans. And you can say, listen, we've already done a risk assessment. I hear your concerns. I'm so glad you brought this up, and I'm so glad you're reading in the news. Let's talk about this. And let me tell you what we've already done to mostly prevent something like that from happening to us. So GRC not only is an enabler, it is a revenue generating function. Okay, we talked about it being perceived as a cost center. We're going to scratch that narrative tonight. We're going to start a new narrative. Compliance programs can be used to win more business. If you've been in an organization where you've streamlined your vendor management assessment questionnaires, boy, those used to take weeks to fill out. Now they take half a day, an hour, sometimes they take 15 minutes. When you've got a good compliance program, you can confidently address those questionnaires. GRC programs can help with business development. They can shorten sales cycles. They can tell us, we can look at measures and metrics and say, that didn't work, but this did. This is what happens. This is how much it costs us when a salesperson loses their laptop. And more importantly, GRC can reduce time to market for new offerings. That all sounds like revenue generating functions to me. Okay. I'm dying to hear some of your questions, feedback, and hopefully I can clarify anything I mentioned in the presentation, and let's hear what you guys have to say.
So much information. We do have a couple things marked out here. Yeah, just like she said, go through, drop your questions and so forth. We're still marking those out. I did drop the open stage link if you guys would like to come up and chat directly. And then also, you did briefly touch on this one here. Basically, nobody else wanted to do the policies and you loved it. Was the recap on you getting into GRC?
Yes. I think there's something in the water where I grew up. I grew up in central Wisconsin. I have a sister who's an attorney. I have a sister who's a compliance officer, and then I do GRC. So I don't know. Maybe it was all the cans of tuna fish we ate as kids.
I see.
There are some people who love documentation and some who don't. And my sisters and I seem to enjoy documentation.
And that's a large majority of it. And we've talked about it on here before. Like me personally, I just love the top-down effect. You could have such a positive impact from the top down to the company itself, the employees, even the general public. So you can have an extremely large positive impact if done properly. Of course, that's extremely difficult to do, but that's also the challenge. So one of the other mentions that you did mention earlier as well was coffee being a great example. I did love that portion as the business enabler, because I think that's a really good analogy as well.
It sure is. Sometimes, the Silicon Valley companies, Google or Facebook, and they sometimes get heckled in the media for having their game rooms and lunch brought in. But there's a reason why they do that. And they do it because you're working with smart, creative people. Sometimes when you have to stop and go and find something to eat, you lose the creative energy, you lose the synergy. And what was the cost of the lunch? I don't know. But if a new product came out of that lunchtime meeting, sure doesn't seem like a cost center anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's the big factor when we're talking about like that business enablement, because like I think from what I've seen is when companies start taking it more serious as far as the GRC standpoint, they're like, oh, we have to follow these regulations to do this. Like we don't have another choice. For us to do business, we have to follow this. And that's where the value comes in.
I agree. And everybody gains value from having good documentation or a good understanding. You've heard these stories of technology departments where the server admin isn't available, went on vacation in the Caribbean, can't be reached, and nobody knows what to do. I would hate to be in that situation. So by going through the process of implementing programs, reviewing documentation, it just keeps all of us on our toes.
Oh gosh, Brexy, come on. First you like Notepad and Edge, and now you're saying you hate documentation. Wow. Also, there's another one here. So Cam's mentioning in writing narrative, do you do that in initiating meetings with C-suite or just find pockets during discussions to drop hints per se?
That's a really good question. It used to be water cooler conversations, or you're all familiar with the elevator speech. I always have, and if you're involved in Toastmasters calls it a pocket speech. But if there's something I'm really passionate about, I'll tell you what. I was pushing my last organization to get an AI policy. They're like, oh, nobody's using it. I'm like, oh, they are. And every time I saw a senior leadership member, I would say, we really need an AI policy. I have a draft available. Can I email it to you? So I don't want to say I ambushed them, but I was ready for certain conversations.
Yeah, and some of the other people that I've talked to as well, I think it's kind of a balancing act too. Like when you have the opportunity.
And the attention. Because if you initiate a meeting with the C-suite and they're handling a crisis, they're not going to remember a word you said. Right?
That's a good example. Yeah.
Hey, I want to go back a second
Of course.
for our team member who said he hated documentation.
Oh gosh.
Though that's okay. I'll tell you why. Because when somebody's got such strong feelings about something, that's where innovation happens. Perhaps if you find somebody who hates documentation, maybe we can have an AI tool that will write the documentation for us or produce it or summarize it for us. I would love to see a really strong GRC LLM. And I know there's a few organizations that have built them or are testing them right now. So maybe documentation just looks a little different in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, and Brexy's pretty well known in the community too. We give him a hard time all the time. Let's see. And some of the other stuff I'm going to pull up here too, or translate it into simple people language, English. I mean, I go to AI all the time and say, hey, explain this to me like I'm 5. So, yeah.
Without the jargon, without the assumptions. I hear you.
Let me. Are you the only GRC person at Black Hills?
Well, if you've seen some of the webinars I've done with CJ, CJ Cox is the Chief Operating Officer over at Black Hills, and he is also a GRC person. He has a ton of experience. He used to be in the Defense Industrial Base. So CJ is another great person to talk to about GRC.
Yeah, and there was a really good video that you guys went through in a webinar series you guys did, GRC for Security Managers. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in chat because I attended that. That was a really good one.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that was valuable.
I mean, anything GRC these days. I mean, that's the biggest thing is that in order for it to evolve even further, like it has to be talked about and discussed more. There's just not enough. There's plenty of information out there, but there's also, it's very difficult to see through the smoke and mirrors.
Well, I've got a question for you all. What do you say when somebody says, do you know XYZ and 1, 2, 3 framework, and you don't work in that framework or you don't care about that? I'll give you an example. I'm familiar with COBIT. I don't care for COBIT. So when somebody says, well, do you have COBIT experience? I, of course, say no, but what do you say when people ask you about a framework you don't care about or you prefer not to work with?
I think that's a good one. I think B-dubs would have a really good answer to this. Space tacos. I say I got nothing. Sorry, bro, but I'm happy to look it up for you. What you need.
Well, so I find this sometimes people will ask me about a framework and sometimes I'll say, listen, I don't do memorization like I used to, but what I can do is I can explain to you how I learn frameworks. And even though I may not have the framework memorized off the top of my head right now, I can learn it pretty quick because frameworks follow a pattern. And that's what we're all good at, right? In GRC, we recognize patterns. We recognize the word encryption because it shows up all the time.
Yeah, and then there's also a couple other ones coming into. I just say, what is that over there? And then run it the other way. ZMF was also saying, yeah, I know that. Let's see.
Yeah, I like your response, Kelly. I would, if there's something I don't want to do, I'm not gonna say I have experience in it because then I'm gonna have to do it. Right? So
But perhaps the thing not to say is that's dumb. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, I think that's the key thing because, you know, like even PBO, who's I think in chat right now, he has the DoD background. He worked with the IRS doing compliance, a lot of 853. But over the last like 2 years that I've known him, I could probably, there's dozens of times he's been like, I've never heard of that, but I'm going to make a video about it. I'm going to look into it. He's got a YouTube channel. He's like, I'm going to look into it and learn it. Like, what is this about? there's been at least a couple dozen times. There's a really good book on Amazon that's like over 50 different frameworks and standards. And they just give like a brief intro to each one that I really liked. But yeah, that's also the other aspect, is that you're not expected to know it all. And I think the worst thing to do is be like, oh, that's stupid, or otherwise. There's a lot of stuff out there.
There is. And sometimes GRC also involves the art of diplomacy, thinking something stupid in your head and you just smile and say, okay.
100%. Smile and wave. Smile and wave.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, and I guess it would depend on the circumstance too, because like you said, you're not a fan of COBIT, for an example. So would you possibly turn around, like if you know them, and be like, hey, why don't you look at this? Like maybe this is a better option and this is why. I think CRI is another one.
Sometimes I've got challenges with, I get a lot of questions on high trust, and I'm not familiar with it. But I think you both mentioned right at the beginning of our time together is there is no one size fits all GRC, and people would choose COBIT or high trust for a very specific reason. Perhaps it was some consultant told them to. Their predecessor chose it and they're 90% implemented with it. Perhaps there's a contractual obligation that they have to do it. We don't always know the full story of why organizations pick the frameworks they do.
Yeah.
Well, Kelly, I'm here to tell you. Hey, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Sorry, I'm trying to get a cord for my phone because it's about to die. I'm doing 900 different things, but fantastic show, Kelly. I love the way that you put the GRC into a simple bubble. I say simple, because that's a relative term, right? I don't know. I really think that a lot of that comes down to money, right? You've already brought it up. A lot of those frameworks is like, well, what works best for me and how much can I budget for? So I that's just my quick opinion on it. I work in a realm. I'm an external auditor, and we do all different frameworks. And we only try to sell what is best for them. If they wanted to get a high trust, but they have no real reason to, we talk them in. We say, hey, well, what about a SOC? SOC 2 first. Let's go this route. Why do you want to jump to that right now? Or maybe we need a PCI. Why you don't even do anything with credit cards? Why do you need a PCI? So sometimes helping these clients goes a long way.
And I love how you said that. Good conversations lead to good understanding. So
100%.
Sometimes I tell people that GRC stands for governance and relationships and compliance.
And that's nice. I like it.
I don't know about you guys, but especially like over in Simply Cyber's Discord, there's still a bunch of people who are like, oh, yeah, what's GRC? And then somebody else will respond and be like, oh, it means this. And it's like completely different. And I'm like, I get it. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, we need to start screaming from the rooftops.
We need to teach people to also use Google.
Yeah.
Like seriously, search. Seriously. Right.
But like, I get it. Did you have something that you hopped on to, Flakinator? I know you.
I just wanted to say, great presentation, and yeah, I only know the SOX because I'm a SOX auditor, and a recent SOX auditor. So,
do you like it?
I'm getting used to it. It's good. I do like it. I'm getting used to it after like 20 years in desktop support. It's a very different thing, but it's cool. I like it. People are really good too.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Did you miss that earlier when we were bashing the 53? Oh, you're muted.
It's better that way, isn't it?
Can't talk about the 53.
I might have been in transit when y'all were talking. So many people in the chat was bringing up 53. I thought I should come up and defend my favorite framework. But once again, that was a great presentation. And I guess my only question, me and Chris talk about it. I usually see GRC in medium to big size companies. I don't really see it very often in the small companies. I usually see GRC when somebody has some kind of requirement, PCI, HIPAA. I'm a FedRAMP guy and this guy. So what's your thoughts on that, Kelly?
Thoughts on FedRAMP and NIST? Was that the question?
Now, do you see GRC in smaller companies or just in the big people with money type companies? That's what I see.
Well, in my younger days, I used to have a managed service provider business, and we had about 400 clients here in Florida, small, medium businesses, and I could tell by the number of help desk calls we would get if they had any sort of governance, risk, and compliance mindset, not necessarily a program, because people would do dumb things. And so one of the things we did with this MSP is we wrote a small a policy book for small, medium businesses and just gave it to them and said, listen, start here, starting with longer passwords, about administrative access on machines, blah, blah, blah. It's not necessarily a formalized program, but I think when you see organizations or small businesses with problems, it's because they are missing some elements of GRC.
And I think that's why you brought up that other organizations are taking GRC narratives. Because usually when I see that, I see IT trying to fill in for GRC. And, they're just hardening stuff. They're really not finding any compliance with frameworks, right? They just got a requirement to 14-character passwords, or these are the requirements to try to fix a finding. So that's kind of what I see a lot.
Well,
Right.
I would kind of say too, even if they're small, they might not have, like you were saying, a specific GRC, because it's not cheap to have a GRC person, a good GRC person. So if you think about it, right, a small company probably can't afford a good GRC person, but either way, they should still have within their IT, they should still be documenting processes and documenting things anyway. So it's not GRC, but they should still have processes in place that theoretically should eventually turn into some kind of policies like password length. And even if it's from a basic standpoint, they still should have something that's in the GRC realm. And if they don't, that is the real issue, whether they're big, small, or medium.
Yeah, what I was going to add to that too is, like, I think one of the struggles, especially when you're looking at that small business, is they're not even aware of it. Like, they don't think about it until after the fact. They're worried about, hey, can I pay my employees this month? Not, oh, we need to comply with this or that, until something pops off and they're like, oh, okay, now this is like a thing. So, I mean, that's what I've seen with some of the different, like, small business owners that I know that are, like, not in cybersecurity.
Yeah, all the ones that I deal with, they trying to bid on some state or federal contract. Now they need some, so that's when they reach out to me. I teach people I own 3% of 20 companies that are worth zero. So people try to give me ownership so I can help them, but that's usually what I see. They have a requirement to try to bid some work or PR5. So then people usually reach out to Uncle PBO. So I told guy when I come in, I did a lot of work for free that I shouldn't have. So that's what I'm gonna tell them in the pearly gates.
So Chris, I would actually say though, even if they're a small company, that's actually the fault then really should be on their IT department if they don't have GRC. Because in reality, the IT team, even if it's one person, shout out to Priceless Pancake, that was that IT guy for like 4 years. Poor guy, I know, seriously, 4 years. Oh my gosh. But I mean, even good IT people, even if you're a team of one, should still be trying to document as best as they can. It's hard when you're a team of one, but they should still at least have stuff done. Even if no one else is seeing it, they should have it, and it should be stored somewhere just because.
But yeah, like, you have that IT background, and I don't feel you were really applying GRC probably. Like, there's a lot of businesses I know where, they hired some random hardware, local mom and pop shop that makes computers or electronics, or a pawn shop to put in their laptop for their business, and that's it. And they're not even aware of anything.
Correct.
So,
and that's the whole other issue too that sometimes will happen.
Yeah. And I think,
and that's what worries me the most. And the last part that I was going to say, and then like PBO can throw his part in, is that's also what we're all here for too, is to scream at the rooftops, including these small business owners, spread the word and everything else. Be like, hey, like there's a local business here where I was like, hey, just so you know, like you might want to look into this. Like that's not really the best way to handle that. Maybe you shouldn't have all of these, medical records sitting on the counter in your lobby.
like,
just saying.
Yeah.
Facts.
I've pointed stuff out to my orthodontist, to the orthodontist I go to for my kids, and I'm like, just so you know, you really shouldn't this, and this. Yeah.
But you don't also want to be that guy all the time, or gal all the time, that does that, because then now you are looking like that know-it-all, when you should actually be absorbing more and then present them with facts in a kind manner. If you tell somebody's baby they're ugly, they're going to be mad at you.
I'm about to bring that up.
But
if you tell them
the baby's
that they're
really ugly, you got to tell someone. I mean, really.
Well, maybe you write it in a journal and you keep it to yourself, right? Because everything PBO says is not of anybody else.
I'm assuming you're from down south, because up north we'll just say anything and we don't care.
No, but and I'll let Kelly problem that. I'm the bad guy. My job is to set tone, so I'm punching you in the throat. I'm not playing. I'm telling you your baby ugly. This is the compliance. This is your findings, and this is what we need to do. Now, somebody else can play good cop. That's not my role, David. That's not what.
I'll be the good cop, PBO. You go ahead.
I'm telling you your baby ugly, and you're gonna get us hacked. I'm telling you your baby ugly, and you about to get us hacked. That's my role. But too, I was gonna throw this to the panel. Most of the time, GRC and IT are adversaries, because you tell them the baby ugly, they don't want to do it. And my favorite word is, you're slowing down our velocity and our agility. I don't think that's the word, but we're not agile because you're giving us
agility.
Thanks. Yeah, you slowing us down. You're prohibiting us to make money. So a lot of times when I go in, they're saying I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm slowing down progress and costing them money. What's your thoughts on that, Kelly? I see you up there now, and I'm gonna throw it back to the presenter. See what she got for me.
Well, usually, Mom always said, if you don't do it right, you're going to have to do it again. And if we're looking at configuration baselines, or IT says, well, I don't want to do that, they're eventually going to have to do it. So either you do it now or you do it later. But I think that's part of the reason why it's so challenging to be in GRC is we're like accountability people. Did you do it? Did you floss? Did you do the thing you're supposed to do? Yeah, your baby's ugly. Sorry to tell you that. But IT sometimes gets a bit, can I say, full of themselves, and they think we do IT just to do IT, and sometimes they need to be reined in a little bit. IT is a cost center. IT is there to serve the business, and sometimes us GRC people have to tell them that, and that's why we don't have friends in IT.
Facts. I have all enemies. Machiavelli.
Hey, Kelly, I wanted to ask you, though, I didn't label it as a question, and maybe that's why Chris didn't pick it up, and I apologize, Chris. I didn't put the Q in front. But you brought up a great point that, is that what she said? There it is. Thank you, Chris. Look at Chris. He's a master of puppets. So my whole point is the documenting the meetings, Kelly. You were talking about the meetings, right? However, a lot of my clients just have this in their head that, no, we had the meeting, right? But how do I know, as an auditor, as an external auditor, that you had that meeting? Well, we'll send you a calendar invite. It's like, man, I can create a calendar invite for 12 years in the past and 12 years in the future. It doesn't mean jack. But show me your agenda, and please maybe show me your minutes. If you want to redact things, that's fine. Just show me that you talked about some things in there, and that's going to save you a lot of time and hassle, and it helps get compliance. So what are your thoughts on people who just give me a meeting agenda or give you a meeting agenda?
There's there's a discussion around the quality of audit evidence. And there's a fancy word for it, and of course it slips my mind right now, but verbal attestation is never as strong as written documentation. And I would have the conversation with them. Hey, I hear what you're saying. I'll accept verbal attestation, but part of the reason why we do audits and assessments not only is to reach compliance requirements, but it's to keep us out of the courtroom, because there's nothing in that meeting invite that says we actually did something or made a decision. Right?
I love it when internal GRC people help us, when they actually have a team. That goes such a long way, because they know the strife that we have too. Audit fatigue is real. If you haven't done one or been a part of one, you're missing out. It's so much fun. I'm BSing all of you right now that haven't been a part of those.
I think it's also important to mention too that he is a high trust fanatic. Just a heads up. So I have been going down a deep dive with high trust lately, going through the assessment handbook and so forth. I think it's kind of neat. But still, I heart NIST all day long. So just wanted to throw that out there so you have that forewarning a little bit.
Something I've brought up, because I'm an auditor now too, is that just because we're getting screenshots from people, AI can fake all those. AI can fake all of it at this point. So it starts to bring into question the authenticity of evidence just in general, because it can, you can start using it to fake things.
I'm fine with them faking, because if you tell me they're legitimate and you get hacked, the legal responsibility goes on you. So I'm fine with that all day.
Yes, they signed the paperwork, Flakinator, that should normally cover them, right? That they gave you, they attested. That's why they have to sign an attestation themselves that says, hey, we promise that we gave you everything legally, blah, blah, blah. And then hopefully you did a walkthrough and you actually visually saw said system, and maybe you couldn't take a screenshot of, we take the time. That's why it costs a little bit more, and we're not government, backed like you are.
No, but real quick though, obviously I've been hanging out with lawyers. That's the first thing came out of my mouth. It's like, dude, you sign off on it. That's your butt, not mine. I'm covered.
So I have another topic that kind of plays off of this as well.
Shout out to R Squared.
How familiar are you with like enterprise risk management and integrated risk management, Kelly?
I think I can spell them. No, a little bit. It's not my expertise.
Okay. Yeah. I was just kind of curious because like, I got drawn into the GRC side because of how broad it is. And then I just, I want to say that I have had a focus myself. And so that's primarily what I do, is I just find interesting things and follow the passion itself. And so I had a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago who is pretty knowledgeable, and they're like, I have never even heard of that before. And I was kind of surprised by that a little bit. And so that's like the direction that I kind of see GRC going a little bit, is more on like integrated risk management, where you're applying it organizationally wide. It seems like there's a large focus on cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. And so the what got me down this route is because like Cam mentions EHS, environmental health and safety. And that's another little area that we've talked about a little bit too, is occupational safety. We're talking risk here. Governance, risk, compliance. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on, just a more holistic, organizationally wide? Like, it seems like there's a lot of focus on cybersecurity. You mentioned a little bit about that in your presentation too.
I would love to see integrated risk management. And I bet there are people involved in our group tonight who work for organizations that have risk management functions and other departments that they don't even know about. And sometimes we get siloed in cyber, but on the flip side, those risk people who are buried deep in the finance department or in the other compliance group, they don't tell us what they're doing. And we got to take it up to the leadership level and say, is there a risk management committee? And that agenda, to go back to what Dave was saying, what's the agenda? Take the meeting notes. We didn't talk about cyber, but we'll have a placeholder for cyber. We're going to talk about We talk a lot about physical and environmental security now that we're in hurricane season down here. I think enterprise risk management is the way to go, but you got to have the right culture to have those conversations and build the tools.
That's what I hope we work towards.
Go ahead,
Do y'all notice real quick, a quick aside, that you see how Kelly is so diligent? She's writing down all these notes that and all the stuff that we're saying in the meantime, and then she looks them over. Every time I watch her when she's doing the stuff with the BHIS, you can always see that she's so diligent with her notes, and that's fantastic that you do that. Unless I'm just making it up and you're just looking down at something else there, Kelly. But
no, I'm old enough where I took notes, paper and pen. And I remember better that way. If I type it, I don't remember it. Kinetic learning, I guess.
There you go. Yeah. No, I hear you.
Yeah, I'm a kinetic learner, and I remember it much better if I write it down with a pen.
I agree.
If I type it, I'll forget it.
It'll fly out of my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually when I see integrated risk management, it's usually coming from finance. When I see it, I usually see it coming from finance. Then they're pulling the risk in because it's on a business function or something financially ranked in the organization. I very rarely see GRC leading that
because they're worried about their money and where it's at.
Facts, but maybe that'll change. But like I said, I worked at some big places, and all the times, like I tell people, is I never talk technologies in C-suite. I say this business function, how we make money, it was in the BIA and it's ranked. So if that bit once I do a lot of IRS work, the Oracle database is down, so we couldn't collect taxes. So the issue is not the database; the issue is we couldn't collect taxes. So from a C-suite perspective, I talk in business functions and ROI and what business function makes the most money.
You see more people get interested in a SOC 1 type 2 than a SOC 2 type 2.
Oh yeah,
like you said, because the money that's where the money's at, baby, and it's just interesting.
And I told you, which I kind of took as a compliment, is my boss is like, you got that IT stuff covered. You let us know if we risk. I got all this other financial stuff I'm not aware of. I don't trust those people. I'm like, well, I think that's a compliment. So it was just weird when I go in those meetings. He's like, I got way bigger stuff to worry about than IT. If y'all, because you got that on. He's like, I got way bigger stuff. I'm like, I think that's a compliment. But
what do you see, Rania? As far as like how the business handles risk or like siloing, because I mean I think that's going to be an issue for many, many years because it's business, government runs slow, but businesses run slow too. But hopefully silos start breaking down even further and so forth. But
I feel like it's difficult. Yeah, in the private sector, because people just get into this mentality of I do my stuff and that's all I need to do. I get paid for this and that's it. In my company that I work for, it's really similar. We have a lot of asking repetitive questions, especially like we have a global corporation and we'll have the North America chat. I'll see the same question popped in there and they asked it 2 days ago by another person and no one even went back and read it. My big thing is just people don't read anymore. I'm not going to say it's because of AI because it's probably just because of the internet, but so many people would rather have someone else tell them like, hey, what's the answer to this question, instead of like going and reading, like looking it up and looking back at the information, which is I think why GRC can be so difficult to implement and maintain, because people don't want to read. And most of GRC is reading and understanding information, policies, procedures.
Well, I know.
Hold on, let me jump in. If I can,
go for it, PBS.
Yeah,
go for it.
We call that fishing for answers, R-squared. People do that on purpose because they can get different answers and they're gonna pick what they want. So I think I see people do that all the time. We call that fishing for the answer. North America said this. I'm like, dude, you knew what I said in the last meeting. So I think people be fishing for it. Then I gotta punch them in the throat. Go ahead, R-squared. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good.
PBO, that's like with kids, right? Dad says no. Oh, let me go ask mom. Or mom said no. Let me go ask dad. And don't tell each one of them that I already asked the other, because, that happens.
But I think
no, the reading thing is a thing. It's people don't want to read. I've found, like, if it's something this long, they'll read this part. That's it.
Yeah.
I find it's easier if you're asking someone questions, it's here's number 1, number 2, number 3, because at least the number jumps out and they'll look, even if it's this long, they'll look at each number and be like, oh, okay. It's also that makes it easier as an auditor to reference back, hey, you didn't answer number 3. And then
you brought it up, like you brought it up, but you just said go Google it. But we've all come up with the RTFM, and
Correct.
then we've kind of gotten away, and I like it that there's more people that are open, like a community like this, Study GRC and BHIS and of course Simply Cyber, et cetera, that there's people that won't just say RTFM, read the manual. So, but at the same time, you can't just have everything given to you on a silver platter. I bet you if we averaged our ages up here, well, I know that there's one person in the top right or top middle that would be the youngest of the bunch. But my point being that we've all been there, and even him, Chris, has had to RTFM. But there's a fine line where you can, if you teach a man or woman to fish, they fish forever.
So-
I know I screwed it all up, but you get the point.
I don't like that, David. I like them to come back to me every time because I'm on billable hours, player. Like you can ask me every time. Go ahead, Chris. I'm billing you every time I send it to you. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so what I was going to mention, if I can find it again real quick. So like Cam, oh, come on. Almost had it there. Let's see. So Cam had asked a question here. So he said, enterprise risk management is more common in the financial industry. I was just going to mention real quick that based on what I saw and so forth, we're looking at massive companies, massive organizations that currently have that. Very, very rare, to be honest with you, because it does cost a lot of money and it's a lot of work. So yeah, I think finance is good, and like PBO and Kelly and David and so forth can speak more to that portion. But also I was going to mention, like, in regards to the processes, like when you start looking at like integrated risk management, that's when you're going into the actual job role. And when you're developing the procedures for that, you're actually thinking through the risk, like what could go wrong. And that's how I associate that to like occupational safety, because I come from a labor background. So, the safety team would go in and watch us do our job and be like, oh, this is a risk. So we're going to, add a jig here so they don't cut their hand off. And, it's the exact same thing from integrated risk management, where we're like, oh, right now they type the numbers in, on this keyboard here. And, maybe we should put something in the system so it doesn't add zeros or something. Like it could only be 6 digits or whatever the maximum could be. And so that's where I find it really fascinating. But yeah, if you guys wanted to also speak to that.
Well, I guess, and I think Kelly brought that up off of Enron. Most of that stuff, when you get found cheating or something happened, then you want to try to do a regulation or some check. Because if you look at most of the STIG stuff, that stuff came from best practices from hackers over 20 years, right? So I think that's when you
follow that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times you giving the industry too much credit. You got them forward thinking, man. We barely backwards thinking, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean,
I completely
you have to remember
agree.
most places are reactive, not proactive. And to be honest, even in IT, most of the time you're going to find that most of the people are reactive instead of proactive. Usually, not because they're not good or anything, but a lot of it is also because they're understaffed, and they really can't be proactive, which is a shame. But I also kind of feel like similar to like everybody's getting hacked and data's leaking everywhere, and then it's like, here's your fine, and like Meta will get the fine, and it's like, okay, you fine me the equivalent of a nickel to us. Like, I'm not going to care, and I'm going to keep doing it because I made like 6 million times more than you just fined me for. What do I care? So I mean, regulations unfortunately have to be put in place, but you need to make sure the punishment for not following some of these rules and regulations is enough that'll make a company stand up and go, whoa, like Sarbanes-Oxley puts the C-suite on the line.
Did you want to
that makes the C-suite stand up and go, well, wait a minute, hold on, wait, what? And so people are going to actually pay attention and follow that, opposed to if that the company itself just gets a slap on the wrist of like, $30 million or whatever, they're not going to care if they're a big company because I made that 10 seconds ago.
Facts.
PBO has a great story there where, it was more effective to delete the records than to keep them for 7 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Because of the cost. It was cheaper.
Yeah, long story short, Kelly, I was doing some IRS work and we supposed to keep it for 7 years. When the vice president came to me, he's like, I'm deleting it. I'm like, dude, the IRS said we got to keep it. He goes, it's more risk for me to hold it than not delete it. He said, what's the odds of them catching us and saying we deleted it? I had to sleep on that. I'm still perplexed to that today. Because he looked me in my face, he's like, I'm going to delete it. It's more risky for us to keep it if we don't need it. I was like, the IRS says we have to do it. He goes, nah. He said, we got a lot of lawyers. He said, man, we got a floor of lawyers, man. We work for the state. We'd be okay. I was like, I need that email, big boss. I just need that email. It's like, we got a floor of lawyers. Because it's more riskier. He says, way more riskier for me to keep it. And I was just perplexed. I was like, that was a glitch in my matrix because he just really said it. And I was like, wow, that just threw me off. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, so PBO, what do you think the risks were in his mind in keeping it?
If he got hacked, if we get hacked, the fine's going to be way bigger because we made $34 billion. I'm going to think we had about 30 billion taxpayers in the state of Indiana. He said, I'm going to get fined per record. That'd be way more than my fine for me to delete, even if we got deleted. He said, I got legal precedent for me to delete it on the risk alone. I go, like I said, I was glitched up. That was his, I'm an interviewer on my channel. I was just really perplexed because he was breaking the rules, but it was sound thinking that really threw me off. So I thought it was perfect, to be honest.
Well, and that's the whole business side of it too. Like we've seen people in Discord talk about that and be like, man, this is, such BS. I told them all of this and they still don't want to do it. Well, because they're looking at that money, you're either translating it horribly or it just doesn't make business sense.
And he was always cool because he was always telling me, because I used to do vendor assessment, he goes, if I'm the plaintiff, I need something to say in court. Just make sure I got enough to go in court. I'm covered. That's what his favorite statement. What can I take to court? And a lot of people, the GRC very rarely gets to the legal part, but Kelly brought up, you got to collaborate with all these different departments. So when I was room with a bunch of lawyers, that really confused me, but that's where GRC and the legal, complexities all come together. So I thought that was, for me, it was interesting.
I see the question that popped up. I absolutely think AI hallucinations.
Kelly, pause real quick. Pause. We got to pause. Okay. This is a big divide in study GRC. I'm going to let you finish, but go ahead and finish.
Mute him, B-dubs. Mute him.
Yeah. Go ahead and finish, Kelly.
I think I missed something there.
No,
go ahead. Continue.
It's a big debate.
I do think hallucinations are a GRC issue because we already have AI governance frameworks. There's quite a number of them that have. NIST has one. The country of Singapore has one. If there's governance frameworks, then it's a GRC issue.
I disagree, Kelly. Go ahead and finish, though. I'm agree.
ISO, high trust, they all,
So tell me why you disagree. I'm curious.
Okay.
PBO's going to throw punches.
Now, long story short, we had a discussion and I don't totally disagree with you. For me, that's just such a high level, unique skill set. That's output from a service. When developers and financials do a Monte Carlo simulation, I don't chime in if their answers are wrong. To me, hallucination means they did something wrong in their AI domain or calculations. I don't think GRC has the fundamental knowledge to chime in on a hallucination, especially since most GRCs are small. Now, I'm not totally disagreeing because if you have the expertise, I'm always in programming. I just don't think most GRC people have that talent, unlike you, Kelly, who's brilliant. I just don't think most teams have that that talent. So that's why I always push back on AI hallucinations.
He's giving you a good sandwich where, you know, you put that good piece of bread, then you put the trash in the middle.
Hold on, David. She just said communications, man. I was showing you my vast communication skills. But go ahead, Kelly. That's my thoughts on it. I don't totally disagree. I just don't think we have that talent, knowledge, and that skill set to be able to chime in on that. That's my issue.
Well, I agree with you. I am not an AI expert. I'm not a data scientist. But
why are you gonna chime in on it, Kelly? Now I'm just gonna jump on it. I'm playing. Go ahead, Kelly. I'm playing. Go ahead.
But a hallucination is wrong information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or something's not correct.
Correct. Like a program.
And I would say, how do we know that it's wrong? Well, we have to put it through a series of tests, or we have to say, did we look at the data? Did we check for discrimination, or did we check for bias? And those are things that I would expect to see in a framework. And while we're not responsible for understanding how the hallucination happened, we can see if there was guardrails, and if they said, well, we've been playing around with these LLMs and we gathered data from Reddit, and I bought some at the corner grocery store, then I'd say, hey, you should know better, garbage in, garbage out. So I think there might be a middle ground there.
And I guess my only thing is that's a lot of responsibility for a small GRC team. Right, there's guardrails like when you do my favorite NIST 153, you have basic checks. Now, if they got some checks I can do basic for governance, but like I told Chris, I'm responsible for the data. I'm responsible to make sure nobody poison it. I'm responsible to make sure it's encrypted. I'm responsible to make sure it rests. To me, once it gets in the AI model, Kelly, you've given my team a lot of issues, a lot of liabilities, and a lot of expertise I don't have.
You're looking at it the wrong way, PBO, in my opinion.
No, I am not.
You don't need to be responsible for that, PBO.
I am.
You are responsible for what other people have written into law. Whatever. Yes.
No, the reason why I said that is when I go as a GRC, there's things I'm responsible for. If those break down, those come to my team. So if I'm taking over hallucinogenics and I didn't run those hardenings or caps or guardrails, right?
What are you doing, mushrooms over there?
My team's ask is on the line. So I don't know. That's how I look at it, David. I protect my team, man. So I'm taking
I wanted to provide a little bit more background to it too. So the topic came up because we were talking about AI. Thanks. We had Cam present about the Atlas framework from MITRE. And that's my perspective and what I've seen through it. Because I wouldn't say that, like, I've looked into it a little bit and so forth. But that's the perspective that I have, is the fact that regardless, it's still a level of risk, and therefore GRC should still be involved in the process.
Wow.
So for an example, if we are deploying out AI tools of some sort, and one of the biggest factors here is the fact that there's entire companies that are running on AI software now.
Facts.
So it's a big issue, and AI is not going anywhere. It's just getting bigger and so forth. Yeah. So it's just like with the IT sector. We have people who are in GRC that work on just networks. Look at like Deloitte when they go in to do an audit. We have specializations, and it's the exact same thing with AI. So just like what Cam's doing is he's upskilling on GRC and he's going deep diving in AI, and he's looking at these different software that is out there to check for bias and hallucinations and so forth. There's scripts that you could run against these models.
That's the developer of the AI's job. But go ahead, my 2 cents. Keep going, Chris.
There's existing GRC people right now that are running these tools.
Oh, I know. I think they're wrong. I know
their reports.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and so like from a business standpoint, if we're going to put a chatbot on our website, okay, we need to be able to say, hey, this has to be an average of over 90% accuracy or of hallucinations or whatever the hell.
Facts.
And then if it's not, then we need to figure out with the development team how the hell we manage this. And so that's why I see that it's still in the loop. Okay. And PVO pushes back because it's DoD siloed.
I'm fine with that. There's a lot of people disagree with me on this life, and like I said, I don't totally disagree with you. Networking's been out for 40 years. We have a very good understanding of networking. We got a ton of checks for networking. We got a ton of checks for Windows
started
databases.
somewhere.
We got a ton
It
of
started
checks.
somewhere.
Facts.
It
My thing
started
is,
somewhere.
I don't think it's been baked enough for us to come with those checks for GRC to put my neck on the line. But like I said, that me and Chris can disagree on that all day. But like I said, that's just my thought pattern on that, because that skill set is so new. I mean,
correct.
So that's one of my issues. All the stuff we talking about now, that's been out for 50 years. Most GRC people, well, half of them came from the IT stack anyway. Most of those guys are doing networks, programming, or something. So they have an understanding on that. When you talk about LLM models, most people have no idea what the hell that is. And so
like
you gonna throw that in GRC line? No.
Yeah, and like we joke about disagreeing on it and so forth, but these are actual conversations that are happening in organizations as we speak, because they don't know who the hell is responsible or who's involved at this point.
They're just not taking the minutes for them, though, for me.
Facts. Shout out to Tim.
Well, no, that's what the AI is for.
Yeah, but my thing is, there's financial models, there's manufacturing models. We don't step into that realm. I mean, there's a lot of divisions that doing a lot of work. We don't step in that realm. I know AI is cute and it's hot, so I think people want to step their feet in there. But that, once again, that's me being condescending too. You know, I'm punching people in the throat. So that's my issue. There's a lot of stuff. We don't jump into financial models. We do not jump in the financial ring. So why would we jump into AI?
Well, that was the question earlier, right? About the ERM that Kelly and everybody was answering, right? A little bit of bringing it all into like one ring to rule them all. That's the way I see it. Hopefully, at some point.
We
but
need
you
to
know,
break down the silos.
I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, so you know. But you know, at some point, you do have to stay in your lane. I 100% agree with you there, PBO. However, it's just getting bigger, and it is tied to tech. And what is our GRC jobs right now tied to? To tech. So we're going to be seeing it. You're not responsible for making sure that 99% of it is correct. That's what the developers and that's what the engineers are getting paid to do. You're just making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing to make sure that it's 99% correct, et cetera, et cetera.
When I was a developer, it's something called development unit test. So my job was to make sure the output's correct. GRC didn't look in at that. If I did a lot of financial models, they never came over and asked me, was the financial model correct? Never. But like I said, I'm old and grumpy, man. I only got about 5 more years. I'm checking out, man. My time about up, shit. But that's my thing is, there's a lot of divisions we don't look at. And to me, once again, and like I said, and don't get me wrong, I definitely see where Chris coming from. And Kelly, I can see it. I just don't think we're ready for it. Maybe that's my issue. I'm like, dude, we barely doing GRC, and y'all want to jump into AI?
Well, go ahead.
No, Kelly, I was just going to say, I was going to ask you a question. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say some of the larger organizations where decisions are being made based on data, if it's finances, insurance industry, they have a data governance group, team, expertise. I've seen chief data officers. I've seen chief data governance officers. And I would offer PBO that if an organization has data governance, data stewards, people who are in charge of the data, then they should be examining the data being used for AI.
Oh, correct. I agree with that. And my job is, once again, GRC takes it to the LLM model. Like you said, you're getting data lakes, raw calculations, S3 buckets, all of that stuff. When you get to, I'm an AWS side. When you get to the Sage model of the Bedrock, I think it's in the AI or data governance teams. But to me, I don't know. I was getting an argument with some guy in data governance because I'm like, dude, we sending too many data elements to this vendor. He looked me in my face. He goes, that's how we get paid. You want to get paid or not? I'm like, send the data elements. Send the data elements, man. I brought it up in a meeting like, Dave, somebody wrote it down. PBO asked about the data elements. They said, send them. Salute the flag.
Then you're covered. Hey, the reactive, proactive thing somebody brought up earlier. I don't know if it was Rania or somebody, but how many times are we going to be reactive? That's what we normally are. There's one AI company, and I won't say their name because I probably am not allowed to, but I've worked with them, and they're actually doing proactive stuff to cover safety stuff, and I'll leave it at that. But I was just blown away, like how, and they wanted us to audit the controls under an AUP, which is agreed upon procedures, and like, well, Hey, I like that. I'm more likely to use your company. And so it just made me feel good inside that they were actually trying to be proactive in this mostly reactive world. And the last thing, Chris, about the EHS, I used to do health and safety as well. Shout out, brother. Didn't know you did that. But all those warnings that are on those cans, that's because somebody tried it first. Like, well, who goes shaving next to a fire, right? Combustible. I mean, I know that's an old joke if y'all know that reference, but that's why they're there. Here's your sign.
Facts, man.
Yeah, and I mean, that's all over the place. Look at these different frameworks. Like PBO knows 53 so well. I mean, that's on revision 5 now for a reason, because it's evolved.
Facts.
Oh, well, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should do that. Just like, the OSHA regulations being, written in blood.
Well, the two big things for shout out to my love 53 was the supply chain and AI risk. Because the Log4j and Kaseya's got whacked last year. So they were like, oh, yeah, we need to make these bigger. So they were super reactive because everybody got smoked. There was so many people had third-party software that had Log4j in it. They didn't know. So they were vulnerable to a lot of third-party assessments. So that family got huge in 800-53. So everybody started putting in their favorite questionnaire. We need all the software. They're like, dude. So it's most of us reacting when something happened and everybody's, framework adds it in there, make it a little better. So, but I'm upset with you, Dave. You're supposed to be on my side. Oh, yeah,
we still need the t-shirt. If it ain't 53, it ain't for me.
Yeah, facts, man. Dave, I thought you was on my side, Dave, man. I'm about to kick Dave off the panel. Go ahead.
One other thing I was going to mention, too, is do you like teaching and educating and so forth, Kelly?
I do. So in my younger days, I was going to be a music teacher, and then realized that I'm not particularly fond of being around kids all day. Right. And so I went off the music teacher path and went into the IT path.
I see. So, what I would like to see everybody do is, if you guys aren't already part of the Black Hills Discord server, is go hop over there, because also we were able to get a GRC Mafia channel made, and then maybe we could, peer pressure everybody into getting Kelly to do a course of some sort, because there's also, anti-siphon and so forth, and she's done webinars and everything else, and there is a couple, GRC related courses on there, but I personally feel like there needs to be more.
Right. I mean, I want a course from Kelly.
Right.
I'm just saying, yeah. So go hop into the GRC Mafia chat over there in the Black Hills Discord and check it out. So, and then we'll just, spam it. Tell Zach, hey, this has to happen.
Brexy set me up, man. I might have to get on Brexy, man. Shout out Brexy.
So I'm looking at the chat. There was at one point we were looking at doing a GRC deck for backdoors and breaches. The last I heard, they're looking at making an AI deck, and that kind of got moved to the top of the pile. But I would love to see a backdoors and breaches GRC deck. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would love that.
I actually ran backdoor and breaches at my company one time. So,
that card deck should always be on top. GRC.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
If it doesn't run through GRC, it's not for me. See, I'm gonna just keep making these rhymes and riddles up for you. We're gonna have so many shirts, it's gonna be ridiculous.
Facts, man. I need to cut all those, man. I need to cut. I think I was the genesis of a lot of those. I love 53, man. 53 for life, man. I'm gonna get that tatted on me. I don't have any tattoos. Put 53 for life on me.
Kelly, were you able to beat out? I think you were able to beat out Milton, if I remember correctly, because I was supposed to talk there, and I got stuck by Milton at BHIS in Black Hills.
Yes, when I had to get to Deadwood a little bit early and help with setup, and that was the best thing that happened for me. Because I got there, and then again, Milton popped up, it became a storm in 2 days, just out of nowhere. And I was very fortunate that I was in Deadwood. The house was fine. So I live in Venice, and the beaches took a beating. And the crazy thing was, we had a bit of storm surge, and yeah, water's bad. Water does bad things. We know all that. But all of the sand that pushed in, there were people who had a foot of sand in their house.
Wow.
Crazy.
Shout out to the Midwest.
Did you have a disaster recovery plan that you had set up there, Kelly? I'm sure you did, possibly.
DR. Shout out to the DR.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's called insurance, right? So you mitigated that risk. You transferred it, right?
And then there was business continuity to make sure you got to Deadwood, right? So
exactly. Well, and here's the crazy thing. October is, National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and it's also the month that most of the hurricanes hit. And so I have never been in Florida in October for like the last 20 years because there's always some cybersecurity conference. So I guess that's part of my BCDR plan. Hopefully,
yeah, my wife wouldn't let me leave, so I had to stay behind. But it was still fun. The tornadoes. I'm on the East Coast, and the tornadoes that were spawned off of it. There was 145 tornado warnings in less than 9 hours, and there was 45.
Crazy.
There were 45 tornadoes that touched down. And look, I'm bringing up the weather. If anybody's asking why I'm bringing up the weather, it was because she got to go and I got stuck, so I was a little envious there, but really was a disaster recovery plan. We talk about it all the time. And if anybody is in the southeastern part, it is a good topic to talk about whether, that it is a form of GRC, but it's also just, where's your risk at? Is your family should be number one, right? Priority and pets and so forth and so on. So thinking about those things, if you really love GRC, and I think you all are, if you're still all here, then the risk is number one. I mean, it's just something you think about. It's just in the back of your mind. I mean, I wake up in the morning like, if I stretch right now, am I going to pull a hammy? The risk is pretty high.
Facts.
Well, and that was also mentioned at the very beginning too, is we had a couple different people mention. So not only did Brendan mention, so true, even if you're not in cyber yet, like me, knowing GRC principles can be productive for general discussion with legal, regulatory, multiple other teams. But then also B-Dubs mentioned that, it's facts on GRC goes beyond cybersecurity. And one of the different things that we started talking about more is the occupational safety side, just because my brother happens. It was actually interesting because I started following the blue teaming and then found GRC. And then almost like a few months after that, my brother, this was like 2 years ago, started pursuing occupational safety. And then like 6 months ago, we were having a chat and I'm like, your audit's the exact same as mine. What? Like, these are exactly the regulations are just a framework. What do you mean? Like, so similar and everything else. But yeah, that's just one example. But yeah, way beyond just cybersecurity. There's so many different factors.
Chris, you see bracket the bones, bare bones?
In chat?
Yeah, I can guarantee you that's his first. Yeah. So bracket the bones, from my point of view, that's why I want clear delineation between GRC and tech, so we can figure out who's gonna wear this error. So that's kind of my issue, right? So I want to make sure from a technical side, this is what I did, this is what's controlled, this is what I'm responsible for, this is what I protected before I went into the LLM model. Shout out to Kelly and Chris. They want to delve into the LLM model a little bit with hallucinations. So that's kind of my thing is. Two is I hang out with a lot of lawyers. So legally, I want to put that up because I think when that happens, people going to start doing a class action lawsuit. So
I think you're hallucinating, PBO, that Kelly and Chris said that. But,
No, I'm not. That's what they said. Hallucinations is part of the LLM model.
But the whole point is that governance, risk, and compliance paperwork that's going to be created is going to cover your ass, PBO. It's going to cover your butt.
But what it says, though, is sometimes, and I brought this up to an FBI agent, if I miss an assessment, am I personally responsible for that? People miss stuff in assessment. If I miss stuff in assessment, am I personally responsible? The FBI agent was cool. He goes, and Kelly shaking her head. She was right. He goes, dude, you so far low on the totem pole. The odds of you getting sued is personally, but the CIO could get sued. The president gets sued. PBO, nah, player, you way down on the low. So, but I want to understand my risk though. That's what I'm saying. I want to understand my risk is low, right? So. But no, Dave,
That leads to a question. That leads to a question for Kelly. What do you think about the insurance for CISOs, Kelly, that has been becoming more and more well known? But yeah,
let's get spicy.
Well, what exactly are they? What's being insured is my question. Protect them from physical harm, protect their income, protect them from ending up in jail,
negligence.
Yes. All of that, yeah, but it's
liability, yeah. I think it's I saw it from the point of view of losing the job, so maybe that there's a little bit of a cushion in there, to until they get another one. It's about libel. It's about anything that the company may or may not want to push down on them. But I'm just wondering how much those run for.
I don't know, but I think the issue got blown out of proportion, and we forgot that a couple of the CISOs did wrongdoing, clear black and white wrongdoing, and that got lost in the whole conversation.
That's true. And I'm interviewing a lady. She was pretty high up, and she worked for the state of Indiana as a CIO. We were good friends, and I asked her, I was like, I didn't know you were covered by the state. She goes, the state attorneys are crap. I got my own attorneys. She's like, I'm not depending on them. I go, I didn't think about that, big boss. She goes, because like she said, this is my livelihood. I'm not playing around with these junior attorneys. I got my own attorneys. I might try to make them pay for it, but I'm not using the state attorneys. I go, damn, I never thought about it like that, big boss.
Well, and then also like most law enforcement has limited immunity to some extent too with legal protections, which is like another thing I somewhat compare it to. But once you get to that point of like negligence, like you knowingly did things you weren't supposed to or otherwise, that's when like, I mean, I'm sure insurance companies are like, oh yeah, we could definitely cover you, just pay us this X amount or whatever. But I wouldn't like to see that price tag. Especially if you're going to an insurance company saying that like, oh, hey, yeah, we need this covered. Like that would be suspicious to me, at least.
I think they're pushing that. Well, I see that a lot of times in RPs. I work for big companies. When we've been on RPs, if they want in there, if we get them hacked, they want $20 million worth of liability insurance now. They're asking for it in RPs.
I've seen like VCISOs and stuff on LinkedIn saying that they're looking for work or otherwise, but they do require insurance that like cover them. And I'm like, what? How do you do like?
Well, it's a complicated issue because the question is, where is the CISO in the org chart? Because most organizations have D&O insurance, directors, officers, and omissions insurance. So if you're deemed leadership or an officer of the company, you're already covered under those other insurance umbrellas. But if you're a CISO and you're not technically a C leader, then you're in a different pond.
Facts. No facts. And like I said, I'm way down on top, but I do carry $2 million umbrella, but I probably would never need it just in case I mess something up and somebody sues me. The odds of that is tiny because PBO is way down on there, but from a risk perspective. So if I run into Dave's Bentley, right, I'm still covered. I could cover the Bentley if I rear in Dave's Bentley or something. But
you ain't got enough insurance for that, Bubba.
I do play. I got a $2 million umbrella policy, man. But that's a whole different. But
so $2 million,
shout
you
out
say,
to
huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Huh. Yeah.
Exactly $2 million, huh? How close did that get? No.
I got about $2 million, yeah. So, but PBO does a lot of different type of business when he was younger. So I had a lot of errors and omission, some rental property coverage. So
Are you talking about claims or coverages?
Coverage. You can get umbrella policy.
Just verifying. So we typically keep the meetings to about 2 hours.
Thanks.
We normally go through like final last words in the last 5 minutes or so, but we can go ahead and start that now. If you guys have extra questions, you guys could still drop it, or otherwise, worst case scenario, we could take care of that in Discord, which the whole live chat is handled in Discord as well. We have a permanent archive in there. I'm going to drop the Discord link real quick, and then Rania, did you have any final last words, any key things to state?
No, I'm good today. Kelly's bringing the good conversations, though.
Kelly disagreed with PBO, so we don't know how good she was. I'm playing.
She'll have to come back just for a session.
Well, and one key note on that too is also it's going to, just like was mentioned multiple times throughout this conversation, is it depends on the organization. So it's really up to them. I'm just fascinated by it because there are a lot of discussions like that happening, it seems.
Thanks.
David B, final last words.
Yeah, no, it's always great to talk to like-minded people, especially about these nerdy things called GRC and stuff like that. I nerd out on it because it is super interesting. A lot of people don't know what goes on behind closed doors. I mean, there's a lot of things that goes bump in the night that we actually kind of somehow, maybe we're not actually setting that configuration, but we're making sure that configuration is set. So take that and run with it if you like. I just think that it's super cool to see from so many different perspectives. So thanks to everyone on the panel and everybody that's watching and writing in all these great comments. So thank you all.
Bam. GRC Mafia. PBO.
No, great conversation. Definitely want to give a shout out to Kelly for joining us today, even though she disagreed with PBO now. But now, great conversation. Really enjoyed it. And once again, I will shout out. I joke a lot. PBO is not 100% correct on everything. This is a big domain. There's a lot of things to learn. I'm almost 60 and I'm still learning. So I definitely love, like David said, these conversations. PBO got a lot of bad habits. So, maybe Kelly's trying to get me on this hallucination. Maybe that's a bad habit. But I want to shout out to Chris Whitlock, B-Dubs, and Ryan for, giving us study GRC and this great content.
And recently we also published a video about some of the red flags about scam boot camps and so forth, because that's a huge issue going on. One thing off of PBOs too is if somebody says that they know it all, run. B-Dubs, final last words.
Great presentation and conversation. We definitely need you back to go against PBO and fight with him. And then I'm looking forward to your new course. I'm super excited about that one. So
the peer pressure is real.
The peer pressure.
I can feel it.
Facts.
And then Kelly, did you have any final last words?
Yes. I'm leaving everyone with a call to action. Take charge of your own GRC narrative. Don't let other people tell you, it's a cost center, it's a check mark, it's a checklist. Don't let them roll their eyes at you. Take control of the narrative. We can be a revenue generating function, and we are.
Bam.
Mic drop. That's it in stream, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, thank you to everybody who joined us, tuned in, and so forth. Even everybody on Team Replay. Definitely join the Discord server for outside of the live streams. We do also have our Friday AMA at 11 a.m. And then, just running off of what Kelly was saying there too is, don't let other people affect that. And then also, it's also, as we move into the future and it evolves even further, we can make that more secure future by just socializing with people, sharing knowledge, doing that awareness and so forth. And one of the awesome things is it's just like with the IT side is you have, networking, you have, cryptography, you have all of these different things and so forth. It's the same thing in GRC. So everybody has their niche really, and it's really awesome. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in. GRC Mafia. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. And thank you to everybody joining too.